Hi, everybody. Vinny Fisher here. I just want to thank you for showing up today, for working on wanting to be a leader who's multiplying leaders. And this subject is, for me, the key to everything we're doing. This is the key to this organization. This is the key to the success we've built in generational impact as it relates to legacy and leadership. This principle at its core, multiplication, is really what sets apart an organization that's going to last from one that's going to fizzle out. So much so, I believe so much in this subject that I've really doubled down on the next season of life all about leadership multiplication. I believe in a principle that multiplication always beats addition. It just does. And so what I want to help you with is understand a real healthy way to see multiplication. Actually be honest with the fact that, lots of people love the idea of leadership development and building up other leaders, and the stark reality of how much it really isn't being done. And then what are some solutions? How can you effectively do it in your organization and come out the other side of it with being a multiplier, to embrace not only the concept for yourself, but in eating your own dog food, produce results that show the proof of leaders multiplying. So here's some of the conclusion right up front. Amazing players. We'll talk about a hiring benefit in another video at some other time, but I'll tell you this secret. If you have a multiplying environment, a sending environment that actually helps to produce other leaders, you're going to attract dynamic people who want that. And so there's a risk. There's a risk with having a multiplication environment. The risk is that people will go off and do some amazing things. And that's true. That is true. There are people always leaving in our organizations and taking other opportunities because we've teed them up for that. So multiplication isn't about keeping. It's about expanding. And so there's this deceit in the world, in the marketplace, that like, if I build an attitude of multiplication, I'm going to lose good people. Well, if you don't have an attitude of multiplication, I would argue you're not going to have good people. And so it seems to self-feed itself. And one of the things I would argue is that the best way to really embrace impact through multiplication instead of addition is to understand that there's a mission of accomplishing whatever it is you're providing as a solution in the marketplace to help God's children. Well, there's a bigger part of that. And if you embrace that piece of it, you will really understand the value of multiplication. And so where does it start? I think it starts first with yourself. I think in order to embrace multiplication, you have to first start with you. Are you somebody who, as a leader, invests in your own development to make it such that you can be a better leader of leaders? I had to face this fact. Early on in my leadership journey, I really was confronted with being a lever puller, not necessarily a micromanager, but maybe a disguised micromanager who believed that if I did it, it'll get done better. And in a lot of ways, that held back exponential growth. So what I did is add people to the team to help me get things done. And so that's, one of the things we did to develop the 70% principle, where we brought amazing people onto the team and gave them room. That in my mind, if they could do it as 70% as well as I could, then could I provide space to allow him their own room to grow within our organization? And so I started taking these baby steps into multiplication, and I started to see the fruits of it. And it allowed me, which I consider the second thing in starting with myself, in doing it. Because I think before I get to solution two, I want to drive this point home deeper. People love the idea of leadership development. Other leaders embrace it. They know it's the missing component of organization. But if you're honest with yourself and you look at your organization and others, not many people are doing it. Most people actually embrace that I'm the best person to do it, so I need to keep doing it. And they lack delegation abilities. They lack growth of others who need opportunities in order to gain wisdom, build up intuition. That all comes from some experience. Well, there's risk that comes along with that. And that starts with you as the initial leader or the core leader. Are you building an environment that does that? Are you starting it with yourself, wanting an environment like that? And then two, if you're there and you mentally are there and your words are there, so measure your words. Pay attention to what comes out of your mouth, because out of the mouth flows the heart. Are you using encouraging words that are building up leaders? Are you empowering them? So one of the things that I see as a problem that does need a solution is if at first solution one is your mindset, your belief in multiplication, then the second part of that is embracing the words you use to empower, equip, inspire your young or not young in age, but maybe young in activity, young in wisdom, leadership, who is getting their at-bats. Building today's leaders for tomorrow's opportunities takes an immense amount of effort. Do I think in the short term it's easier to do it yourself? Absolutely. Do I think that adding more to your plate will get stuff done today? Yep, because you have a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom. Do I think that multiplication will always beat addition? Yeah, in the medium and long term, without a doubt, because I will have now built up more people who can take on more capacity. And if we continue this multiplication effect throughout the organization, the fruit is there. And so empowering and equipping is the step to doing that, giving them the room to grow. And so when I look back at our organizations, expansion of leadership, hands down, is what's allowed us to not only have a dynamic culture, but a strong organization that has some real attributes of generational growth. We're building up the next generation of leaders. And so it's not really going to be just based on whether I'm around or not. That's a big deal. And so multiplication really is the best track towards legacy. And so when you start your mindset into leadership development, that you're going to be a multiplier, and you start to embrace that, your words will change. You won't be as annoyed that they can't do something the way you do it. Now, it's hard. I get it. I've stepped down as the CEO of our company, and I've embraced she's deserved it. Rachel's promoted into that role as the CEO of one of our organizations, and she's an amazing leader. To watch her grow and how she helps our people and cares and embraces all the principles of our values. If I didn't have a multiplying attitude, then I would stay in that role and do all these other things, and I would have an addition attitude. Well, the fruits of multiplication would require me, if I want to keep amazing people, to create space for them. Well, the next space was giving her that role. And so I looked at it as like an effective part of our partnership is how can leaders develop more leaders? One of the telltale signs that I see in a marketplace organization where you have a leader multiplication problem is delegation and implementation. So the problem was early in my career, I was a lever puller. I pulled all the levers. I did all the work. And when I stopped pulling the levers or do the work, lots of things would crumble. As a matter of fact, one of our probably largest organizations to date were broken, a web hosting company we had, because I was pulling all the levers. And when I stepped away, the board voted to have me step away as our chief executive officer to go focus on some other projects. And I was distracted with chasing a bunch of projects. Well, in the process of that, I don't think everyone realized, including myself, in my own arrogance, how many levers I was pulling. And very quickly, we had a delegation and implementation problem. But even in the moment, good organizations, which are not destined to be great organizations, have this problem. And by the way, all this material that Jim Collins writes on Good to Great, How the Mighty Fall, this is all good stuff that talks about this principle that really is built around multiplication. Good organizations, as Jim says, are not going to be great organizations. And I think one of the main reasons is this issue. Pay attention to do you give and hand off? Do you delegate into other people's hands so that they can make good decisions for the organization? I know this takes a lot of risk, but if you actually have a mindset of multiplication, I think it's way riskier to make all the decisions yourself. I have the proof that I broke a 9-figure organization trying to make all the decisions myself, and it really stifled delegation, organizational implementation. And especially when I stepped away, it was a house of cards. So the solution to that is to actually hand off work so that others can use that, gain that skill in doing the work. And that's the beauty of delegation, is you're building up others, helping them experience doing and managing and leading so that they can build up the wisdom that comes along with making decisions, throughput decisions, to then ultimately delegate themselves. Now, I know we don't want delegators delegating because who's going to get the work done? That's why roles are clear and timing as to when's appropriate to do that. But I do know this. There are too many leaders today without a multiplication mindset holding back the work because of really probably the hero complex. When I honestly assess where I was, I knew I was the best person to get the work done in that moment. But I didn't have a longer vision of our organization. I just had an immediate vision of getting something done. And I wasn't making the investment to the medium and longer term perspective of the company. Well, that organization broke. And that organization ultimately ended up selling for parts. And it was a wonderful organization. It had other issues at the partnership level. I wasn't really ready for all of that. So that was part of the journey of why it broke. But in reality, when I look back to that organization, we didn't have an attitude of multiplication. And that was probably a leadership problem, not only for myself, but as it all played through the organization. And so the next piece that I think about when I think about having multiplication just throughout your organization is people are stepping into roles. And so they need to develop skills and develop in those roles and have training to do it. I think that a multiplication environment, if you are a multiplier with the mindset and you want to give space to people to grow and help and teach not only yourself but others delegation, it comes along with a commitment to training and skill development. See, the problem I had early in my career is I was always annoyed that someone wasn't as good of a salesman or as good of a marketer or as good as understanding the customer as I was. And it's a really unfair burden to put on somebody because I had more time in the system. I had an intuition. I had a wisdom. And some of those are just given strengths of mine that are mine, that I had a real intuition for the customer. Well, and a clearly effective way to communicate some of that. Well, those really lined up in the early days to allow me to be a highly effective strategist in growth. Well, to put that same burden on other people without providing them skills and training is not a multiplication attitude. So the solution is really investing in an attitude of continually coming alongside your people to provide them the development so that they can thrive in their role, not just do your work. And that was such a big deal in our organizations that we have clear, structured training that's really the basics over and over again because it's the critical component. I believe in effectiveness is done through consistency and efficiency. And that's the kind of training that we constantly do over and over. And I want to really thank Chet Holmes and his organization, that the Ultimate Sales Machine and their talk on training a number of years back to me spoke to me through that book. And I really took that and challenged our team. And we did such a great job building that all up. And it really was such a wonderful opportunity to help us embrace a theory of multiplication through taking some of the risk out by training and developing our people along the way. You know, another thing that I see that lacks in an organization is this idea of using technology to multiply. We live in a world today where there should be no excuse around this. I recognize that most organizations probably just live on yesterday's understanding about themselves and are riding the fumes of success. Rory Vaden says something that, success is like rent. It's due again tomorrow. And I love that because I really have embraced that in our leadership and technology, that we should be always innovating, always improving. Well, in a multiplication attitude, I kind of should expect and see and have seen the proof that our leaders who are growing in leadership also have that same attitude. And so I'm excited that most of the ideas today that are coming up with innovation are coming from what I would consider leaders. And there's this like multiplication factor. The progeny in the law we talk about is what's the fruit? Where's the evidence that that's happening? And so I think one of them is innovation, and specifically through technology. And so do you have an innovative environment? I would like to challenge you with that as a concluding thought. When you think about multiplication, it starts with your mindset. If you aren't wanting to embrace your own leadership development, having a firm foundation to see your people in your organization as an opportunity for them to lead and grow, you're missing the whole point of organizational excellence. Anything done well, said by John Maxwell, is never done alone. And in order to have something dynamic, you really need to embrace this concept of multiplication. It's everything. Multiplication always beats addition. And in order to accomplish that, I want to encourage you today to have a spirit of multiplication. And if you don't, how do you take captive the thoughts of some of the possible lies you've told yourself along the way, that you're going to lose your people? Well, I want to leave you with this thought. You're not going to attract great people if you have a less than good mindset on this idea of multiplication. And I want to wish you the best in this journey. This part is the biggest payoff, and it requires your investment. It's hard work. I don't want to be patronizing and let anyone tell you that this isn't hard. This is hard, but I know you can do it.